Welcome back everybody to Squared Away, our weekly Square One recap show. I am CJ, joined as usual by Vaeris, and this week we have a very special guest, Vaeris, do we not?
So we have none other than Svaho, who is the owner of Split Raiders and the manager of that team, and they are our reigning champions.
Hello, how are you doing?
It's too hot. It's too hot. I can't deal with it. It's not just the league that is heating up, it's the whole freaking planet, and I'd like to cool off if that's possible.
I agree.
Yeah, don't blame you. I've been stood outside, letting customers in and out all day long, so...
Oh, sitting in the sun, that's not what you want. Okay, we're in the shade now and we're focused. Let's get straight into it. We have our nice updated recap graphic here after week 2, and the standings, they're looking fairly similar as week 1. We still have Sparks and Black Lion at the top, and now we have Glorious Gaming, Resolve and Split Raiders right in that middle slice, and then Absolved falling down to the bottom to join Core Dynamic and Lions Creed. So we do have these 3 tiers, quite similar to last time, but I think the most important thing, the most exciting thing that we've seen so far is that Black Lion, they're looking like definitively the best now. Last week we had a lot of praise for them, but now they're looking unstoppable.
They're definitely looking like one of the stronger teams in the league, and we definitely wanted to see how they're doing this week with the harder opponents coming up. And now that it looks like they've started to prove themselves a bit more. Obviously, we're not even too far into it yet, so there's still time they could slip up along the way. And we know teams in this league like to bounce back, like Split Raiders.
Yeah, well, last season, if you analyze last season from week 1, week 1 we didn't have a roster. The roster wasn't even there. We didn't have Nazgul, we didn't have Velja, we didn't have Bonakai. Week 2, Velja and Bona were able to play. And then I think at week 3, when we were we were 2-2, and then week 3, Nazgul came in, he stomped a few games, but we went 4-4 at the middle of the split. And then the meta, I guess, shifted a bit into our favor, more than the other team's favors, and Nazgul just kept popping off, and he proved that he's by far the best player in SQ1. He got the MVP, he got, I think, the overall, finals MVP, or was it Electric God? I can't really remember, but the whole team kept popping off the entire season, and that was very, very nice to see.
It was super, super impressive, and there have been some shaky times for Split Raiders in these first couple of weeks. I know that Bonakai said that everyone was a little hungover on the first game, but Lawless particularly came into his own a little bit more. We had the Fiora game getting into a true comfort pick, and that is back to that kind of super carry top laner. You can just rely on that top side of the map being super strong, and Saint Su of course on the Wukong, and so is it the mindset of Split Raiders that you guys are we going to go back to that kind of top lane carry destroy everything role, or is it going to be a lot more flexible? Because Flamey's been popping off as well, Electric God, he's grown so much.
The whole situation with our team, last season, going into this season as well, is that we are the team that doesn't scrim. We are the team that just comes in every weekend. We just play our games, and people like having fun. And that's basically it. Last season, we knew one way to win absolutely every game, and that's just let Nazgul do his thing. He buys Doran's ring on Irelia, goes into lane, kills the enemy Mordekaiser, goes back to base, sells the Doran's ring, and he's still ahead. So we saw stuff like that happen, and this season, it's obviously not going to be the same as last season. We did lose the top lane and the jungle, of course, and the 3 other guys. They haven't adapted yet to the 2 new guys coming in. Of course, Saint Su has a bit of competitive experience. Mattia or Lolus doesn't really have that much competitive experience, but he is steadily playing his games in Diamond and Master and everything, and I think that he will perform eventually.
For sure, and he, like I say, he has already started to put up some impressive numbers going through there. But getting through those 2 victories especially, I think that you can see on your screens that Flamey does have an MVP there, and he's now one of the 3 people in the league who has 2 to his name. And I think they were 2 insane Vlad performances. Flamey has really kind of separated himself out from the pack now, it seems, and has put the game on his back more than once. Do you think that, you know, he's going to be able to keep doing that when, as he said in the post-game interview, like, he's not getting Vlad again? It's just not going to happen. Like, he's got to be able to keep doing that, right?
I believe that it was last week's episode where the Omena, right? He commented on Flamey being a Vladimir one trick, and proceeding into the game, we thought that, like, well, we're not going to get Vladimir, but we wanted to show he's not a one trick specifically against Absolved, just to prove a point. But Absolved lost all their bans because they were late. We decided, hey, instead of playing something other than Vlad and proving a point, let's just play Vlad and prove the point even more. Yeah. You can ban out the Vlad if you want. He isn't a one trick. It's just a very broken pick with the new ghost buffs that it received. It's very broken with Yuumi. Like, you have Vladimir heals, Vladimir empowered heals, and then Yuumi heals on top of it with Athene's and Holy Grail and stuff like that. I believe that in the first game, the first win when Flamey got the MVP, Bona, like, when he would sit on him, he would give him around 120 AP.
Yeah. Really
the thing is, Amena likes to just dog on anyone who plays Vladimir. That's just his thing. He hates that champion so much that anyone plays it is like, oh, Vladimir players.
Dude, get him out. It's been a square one thing every season that the league has been alive. All 4 seasons, Vlad mid has just been this terror that nobody knows how to deal with apart from slapping the ban button. So it looks like that's still staying the same. You know, a lot has changed, but that seems to be an eternal law of square one. Is Vlad broken? Please ban. So we'll see how that develops, I guess.
There was another thing I wanted to get to. I wanted to get your opinion on Black Lion Svaho as a team.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch the game versus Black Lions due to having job issues outside of SQ1, of course, and I wasn't able to see what happened in the game. But I think that on top of a very bad draft by our side with the Sivir pick that was very troll from our side, I don't remember the other picks. I remember specifically the Sivir pick because we discussed it afterwards that it's a bad champion. So I can't take anything away from Black Lions, but I can't take anything away from my own team because I didn't watch the game, and like from what I heard, the draft was actually a much bigger problem than it should be in our usual games. Last season we trolled the draft a lot, but we decided to just pick whatever we want in top lane and jungle and then just carry through that, and draft doesn't matter because it's not that high of a level, so it's whatever actually. And we proved the point there, but now I think that where the level of the team kind of fell, we need to adapt our drafts accordingly.
Do you think that from what the rest of you've seen of the league, you know, you've seen some of the other games, do you think that the other teams are putting a lot of effort into their drafts, or are they still memeing it just like a little bit?
There are teams that like put effort into their drafts, and they're taking it a lot more serious because they're using the same teams in SQ1 as they are using in their main leagues. But of course, like, there are teams that completely just go happy in the draft. They don't do much, and as you can see, like, it doesn't really play off. We're one of the pure examples of it, where we completely trolled the draft. Like, in the 2 losses that we have, we trolled the draft. Lions, Creed, Core Dynamic, Absolved. I don't know, like, I think that Core Dynamic last season, Core Dynamic this season is bad team, so the draft really doesn't matter for them. I think that the same should go for Lions Creed, who last season I think that their mid laner kept carrying them, and I'm not very sure if he's still around. So
No, he's not the same mid laner anymore.
yeah, I only know him by the solo queue name, so I don't really know who he actually is.
I would be very surprised if he has not gone on to another bigger thing, you know, given the performances he was putting up, and even people, you know, like in other leagues were aware of this guy and we're just, you know, waiting to see what he would do next. So I imagine he jumps up in Lions Creed. Yeah, they've not been able to find someone to fill those shoes. Dimdog has been struggling quite a bit. Last season they were decent. They were, you know, they stuck into playoffs, and as you say, Nox was carrying them quite along the way, but I don't know, it just feels like this roster doesn't really have a spark, you know, to get themselves going.
Last season, I think that they actually were they were tied with Black Lions or for Dynamic for the playoff slot, and then like I'm not sure. Last season, both GG was obviously the worst team, and then Core Dynamic probably, and then it was tied between Lions Creed and Black Lions. But the problem is that Core Dynamic, with a Platinum ADC, was almost able to get a slot between the two slots that Black Lions and that Lions Creed actually took. So I wasn't very sure about the bottom three teams, and then the loss that we did have with Lions Creed was like completely our fault for letting Katarina go through. But I think that in that game actually Rek'Sai was the big carrier, not Katarina. Katarina was just there to pick up the kills.
I think we can all agree that Retromaster is the greatest Vayne player to have ever touched Square One. I think that's pretty easily decided there. No other strong Vayne players that I can remember. No, that's definitely not. Okay, so overall, I think that we can move on to our second section here. We have this recap done and dusted. Just as a quick aside, you can see the MVP votes. There's a couple of large ones at the bottom left there. Those are the MVP fan votes, where we get the fans on Twitter to pick their kind of grand MVP of the 4 of those games, and we see Nafkala off that DC'd Rise performance, I believe it was, that he came in, and then Jackal as well. So a pair of mid laners making their marks there. I guess Flame is going to have some competition going into those next weeks with them. But we are going to go over to winners and losers next. We're going to have another very professional instant no fade transition right here, and let's get stuck right into it. I'm going to lead off once again, and my winner for this week is Kachka and Omena. And now, purely for getting to cast that Glorious Gaming Lions Creed game, normally Soraka top lane is dull, to say the least. But I think the healing combo of Senna and Soraka just made every fight this clutch turnaround, and then the rest of the game degenerated into an absolute fiesta very quickly. I think that a lot of casters, you know, the normal answer is, oh, I love to see high-level gameplay, I want to see the best teams play at the best level all the time. But I think that having a bit of a mess every now and again can, like, really cleanse the palate, you know? Yeah,
no, I can agree with that, for sure. And like you said, casting Soraka top is it isn't easy, because it can be very dull, very boring. Just gonna hit you with a Q, run away. You know, it's very hard to punish correctly.
Yeah,
I think that the biggest winner this week was like Sparks. They fell into the situation that they fell in. Like Nafkila wasn't there, but Nafkila came back, and like people don't realize, like they don't follow him probably on Twitter, but Nafkila is the biggest bring back old Rise on Twitter guy, and he brought a shade of all Rise. He kept doing his thing, and I think that it's the same thing as last season with Nazgul. You're bringing in their Greek coach Leviathan. He's bringing in a very good Balkan player that hasn't been seen in a while from his very, very bad situation that he was put in EBL. But here you have another EBL player in Nafkila. He's 100%. He can change whichever of the like bottom 4 no disrespect to him, but like EBL is, in my opinion, very stacked in mid laners.
Yeah.
But this season he can change any one of the 4 mid laners in like the league, and he can perform like on probably a better level than they can. And I think that in SQ1, like Black Lions, Sparks, Split Raiders were probably the top 3 teams. All teams have a Balkan player in one way or another.
Yeah, dude, that's what you gotta do now. People talked about Danish mids going to North America. We need to get the Balkan mids trend going in European side. Just get them infiltrating all the highest levels.
That's where it's really at, the Balkan mids that are infiltrating.
Can you add Balkan players in SQ1 to the winners?
Yeah, let's go Balkan players. Here we
That's
go.
definitely a good
Balkan
addition.
SQ1. Pog, okay.
And what's funny is that pretty much adds on to what I was gonna say. So I had 2 winners, and they're both Sparks members.
It's breaking the
And
rules
it was,
already.
it was Nafkala. Well, you have a Mena and Kachka. Come on, you've got 2 people.
Yeah, okay.
Mine was Nafkala and Antero.
Yeah.
So obviously Nafkala's a performance which we just talked about. He was DC'd, unforeseen circumstances, came back and made a Vlad completely useless who had a lead.
Yeah. Insane.
And he just controlled the entire game through him. And it was insane how they played around that and gave him the time to actually get back into the game. And despite being DC'd, he caught up within like 2 minutes. It was like so fast he actually caught up in CS, became relevant really fast, and just controlled the entire game through him. And then the second game, they actually get Antero back in for this game, and it's the game everyone's hyped for because it's GG versus Sparks. And GG were actually looking really good before this. They were actually looking way better than they have done every other season. And it was like, maybe they can beat Sparks. Maybe they can make Sparks' win streak go away. But then Antero just kept finding engage, and Sparks just played smart around that. Like, they would force a double TP into bot lane, and then they'd just back away without any casualties. They'd force the TPs and then get like 2 plates on top, 2 plates on mid, and they would just push their lead through that. And I think just both them players played a really good week.
Yeah, it was really crazy performance. I think that going from DC'd, losing all of your pause time, then fully DC'd for another couple of minutes, starting, coming back to lane 20-30 CS down, and within like a few minutes you're trying to solo tower dive the Vlad to get a 1v1 kill. Admittedly, he did die and didn't get the kill, but completely taking control back of that lane is just something really, really exciting to see. And I think that does lead quite nicely into my loser, which is Vladimir stands, because for the reasons we talked earlier about Flamey being just too dang good at this champion, and then Lucker losing lane as Vlad to a DC'd Rise is just, I think that the Vlad, either it's too good on a few players, they'll never get it through bans, or I don't think Lucker's going to take it again, you know? I think he had his chance. I think it's time to put the Vlad on the shelf, and I think that anyone who loves to see Vlad games, I think we're done for the season, personally.
I actually have to defend Lucker a bit here, because what the hell was his jungler doing? Sparks jungler is sitting under mid tower, getting 1 gold per minion because of the jungle item, and he had like what 3 or 4 minutes of that happening in mid lane. So he had the entire jungle for himself. He can do like almost every camp. He was supposed to be like 2,000 gold difference just in the jungle, and then on top of that you're supposed to have like more difference in mid laner, because the mid laner is DC'd. The guy that's acting as the mid laner is receiving 1 gold per minion, and you're somehow still able to lose a game where you should have accumulated like 3,000 to 4,000 gold of advantage, which should have led to like tower diving the Rise, who's like level 2 coming back with just a ruby crystal, or just a crystal or something like that. Like, it's really like trolling from the side of his jungler. I can like defend Lucker on that perspective a bit.
Sure, absolutely. I think, and one of we were talking about how good Nafkala is and the late game carries. I asked him in Twitch chat, when's he going to play Vlad? When's he going to pull it out? And he said Vlad's too hard, so I don't think we're going to see him pick up that champion. You know, he'd rather just play Rise, go EQ for the rest of his life. So unfortunately, I don't think we'll see another god like Vlad drop onto the scene. So, if that's my loser there, let's go on to Vaeris. Who is yours?
This is a harsh one, but Absolved.
Oh no! Oh, well, I think it's a fair one, maybe.
They have looked really weak in every game so far, and it looks like they have no identity since their roster being changed up.
Yeah.
And it's really hitting back hard. Like, even their win they shouldn't have got. And it's not even harsh to say that, because if you watch the game, they lost hard early game. There was inting really hard.
Yeah.
They didn't draft so well, and they only won because of their top lane popping off in that game. Like, literally the only reason they actually was able to stay relevant in that game was because of him. And so far, it's just a loss of identity for the team. It doesn't look like they have a win structure to play through, and that's why Absolved is actually my loser.
Sitting there at 1 and 3, looking pretty rough for them. I don't think Split Raiders have played Absolved yet, right?
Yeah, we did this week.
Oh, you did?
They did, yeah.
Handed them
Yeah.
over.
Absolved lost their bans because they were late.
Yeah, it's all
those
lost all
flag
their
it.
bans.
Yeah, you got
Yeah,
it. Yeah, well, I mean, it looked pretty rough without bans, and who's to say how much better it would have been with them. I guess we'll see if they can stabilize. I think Pinata was... Even he wasn't playing, right? It was Stare up in the top lane, the Malphite? Was that...
Yeah,
Yeah,
I believe so.
Pinata was the MVP winning player, looked like, such a strong player for them on the Urgot, and then now to see him leave, and then they had that Malphite draft. Yeah, it really does look like a tough one for them. I guess it would be rough to see Absolve go from the top of our table to the bottom. So, if that is Vaeris' loser, Svaho, how about you?
Well, I'd personally say that the biggest loser, like, right now is obviously, like, Lions Creed. They're 0-4. They're not doing anything well in any of the games. They were the team that was, like, versus the FK, right? Like,
Yeah.
or am I wrong? Yeah, I think so. Oh, Core Dynamic was?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, sorry, so it's Core Dynamic, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same principle applies. Like, Lions Creed is 0-4, Core Dynamic is 1 and 3. So, like, you're losing a game to a guy that's AFK. You're losing to a jungler that's just farming under mid tower for 1 gold. I mean, yeah. Other than that, I don't know what to say. There's obviously like an argument that we might be the biggest losers at the moment because we're the champions and we're 2-2. So. That's also an argument that I can bring up, but for now, let's say it's Core Dynamic.
But then also, like, a counter statement is, like, looking back to, like, last split, obviously you didn't have the players at the time, but you started off rough and your team evolved very fast.
Yeah.
And who's not to say that can happen again for Split Raiders?
Yeah, of course. Like, it's always an option, and that's why I like the format of it being played in one day instead of like being played multiple days in the week, because you can prepare for more time and more teams get to pop off eventually. Like, who knows? Black Lions and Sparks, they're doing quite well right now, but we saw GG is 2-2. Like, from last season, that's a big improvement in the first 2 weeks. So who knows? Maybe they're the next champions, but it's probably us. But maybe.
Sure. Yeah, like Sparks started off last season 5-0, and they're not even there yet. And then they went right into the bottom of the bin for half the season before kind of getting their stuff together and clawing it back to make it all the way to the finals. So
that's the thing. Sparks looked like the best of the best last season when they started off, because they were slapping everyone. No one could stand up to them. They just looked best in every role. That's what it looked like at the start. And then they started losing and losing and losing. Then they started looking at like one of the worst teams, because it was like, where's Sparks from the first 2 weeks gone?
Yeah. And
again, that can happen to any team here. Like,
they went 0-2 against us in the regular season.
Yep. That net, what is that? 2-5 record across the season. That's pretty conclusive, honestly. And I think, I mean, so Sparks did manage to turn it around at the end, and Split Raiders as well, you mentioned, turned it around partway through the season. Core Dynamic also did last season. They went like even worse record. They started off 0-X, 1-8 or something crazy, and then they managed to get their wins together at the end of the season. But that was largely through the reintroduction of Varte, and Varte specifically is now struggling really hard this season, so it might just be that, you know, he's just maybe not able to stack up as well as before, where last time he was able to come in and be one of the most impactful junglers in the league. Now it seems like, you know, Rosara took him to town in the jungle, and then as you say, against Sparks, like with his enemy jungler in the mid lane, he wasn't able to get anything done. So something's got to kind of click again for Varte, I think, because he looked so promising before and is really just having a rough time now.
Not only that, I think a lot more talented junglers have actually came into the league, so it's sort of like push Varte down more.
Yeah.
And because his champion pool isn't massive, he gets easily played around because people would just be like, all right, we ban Nunu, we ban Ivern, we limit his champion pool. And this seems to work. This seems to work for every team which seems to do it, because it seems to limit their options of how they can win, because Varte used to pop off a lot on these champions. It's just now there's better junglers, I think.
I mean, when a guy plays Nunu and Ivern for almost every one of his solo queue games, and then the third champion that's on his list is Singed, and he's running it, and that's mostly him just being tilted, I guess, and running it down. When you see that in an OPGG of any player, well, first of all, I wouldn't sign them, but the second part is that, like, you're obviously going into draft knowing, hey, these two things are going to get banned, and we're having to play as a Jarvan, as a Olaf, as something like that. And every team should be very comfortable going into draft against them, because you already know two of your bans, and the third ban is just like probably meta dependent, and that's it.
Yeah, that is some strong words right there. Varte does have a lot of ground to make up. I think that probably is going to wrap us up. We've got all our winners and losers locked in, and we've gone over the week. Thank you very much for joining us, Svaho. It's been really great having a talk to you here. You've had a lot to say that we've loved to hear. Thank you, of course, Vaeris, for joining and co-hosting with me as always. And we'll hopefully see everybody next weekend, 2 p.m. CEST, Saturday and Sunday, as always, for more Square One action. Thank you for watching.